Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What a fun day. What a fun day it was. A little blowback over Representative Gosar's anime video. Evidently, the Republican Party's okay with fantasizing about killing a fellow member of Congress and the President of the United States. Because, hey, it's just anime. It's cartoon. It's fantasy. Yeah, these are these folks' fantasies. While simultaneously, there's talk of stripping the 13 traitorous Republicans who had the audacity to say, hey, you know, maybe we should pave our roads and bridges. Maybe it would be a good idea to invest in the country. Those 13, heresy. And there's talk of stripping them of their committee assignments. But the guy who literally wants to murder the President of the United States and a colleague, that's okay. And his own sister calls him a psychopath. That's what we have currently in the Republican Party. Yay! So much fun. And look, you know, here in Pennsylvania, it's getting even crazier because the Republicans are following the national lead here in Pennsylvania. When I thought that Senator Mastriano from Adams County was the worst possible person politically in this state, there are a bunch of people going, no, Rick, hold my coat. Here, hold my beer. I can do worse. And there are. I look at this Sean Purnell guy, who is kind of a caricature of a giant a-hole. There's a video of him running around saying some really interesting and fun things about women, and you know how he doesn't like narcissistic women. They're too full of themselves, and you know, going, is this how you're going to pull the dimly educated women by insulting them? Maybe this is a great strategy. Maybe Republican women are dumb enough to fall for it. They fell for the race theory critical thing in Virginia. So maybe this is the ploy. The party has gone so far down the I love the poorly educated hole that maybe this is it. But wow. GOP, what the? There was a story today, and I'm waiting for it to happen, that Dr. freaking Oz, is going to run for Senate here in Pennsylvania because the Republican field is that crazy. And just when I thought it couldn't get to be any more of a clown show, just when I'm going, well, you know, who's going to wear the red nose and the floppy shoes now? In rolls Dr. Oz, who probably is going to announce at some point in the near future that he is going to throw his hat into the ring. And you go, how much crazier can it get? Well, it could get a lot crazier. Because understand, there's nothing here with the Republican Party other than show. It's all about who can be the most extreme. It's like the idea of, it's turned into a reality TV show of how far down into the depths of depravity and insanity can you go to elect somebody who's going to do nothing when they get there but cause chaos and make anime videos of killing colleagues. I mean, we're in such a weird spot where you've got one party who's saying, look, we do need to invest in the country. We need to rebuild our roads and bridges. We need to help families. We need to do things to get ahead. We need to do something. And you've got one party going, no, we're going to do nothing. But we're going to make cute little videos and we're going to complain a lot. And then do it in such a way that stokes anger and fear. Because all they have left, and this is not new. This is who the Republican Party has been for a very long time. But they live in the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of need. They live in that fear-based world. Because it's all they've got. They've got no policy goals. They've got no initiatives that are going to make lives better. They've got no ideas on how to bring back manufacturing. They have no ideas how to deal with education. All they can do like a 2-year-old, is stomp their feet, whine, complain, and say no. Clearly the party of no, and have been for a long time. No ideas, no initiative, no thoughts. That's who these people are. Well, not true. They're the party of the ultra wealthy. Whatever they want, they get. And usually by saying no, the ultra wealthy gets what they want. And this is where we've been stuck for way too long. So when I see the names on this list of all these crazy people who are running for Senate on the Republican side, I'm going, wow, could it possibly get any worse? And in comes Oz. Hey, maybe fruit smoothies for everyone. I don't know. Gonna be an interesting year. Gonna play out to be a fun and an interesting year. That's all I can get into. Also today, some news coming out of Congress. 10 more subpoenas coming out of the January 6th commission. All people who are surrounded around Trump. Nicholas Luna, the former president's personal assistant. Molly Michael, a special assistant to the White House. Ben Williamson, he was a deputy assistant, senior advisor to Mark Meadows. Christian Liddell, former White House deputy chief of staff. And then you get into the John McAtee, Trump's personal director. You got Keith Kellogg, national security advisor to Mike Pence. You got Kayleigh McEnany, former White House press secretary. Stephen Miller, which I think is the big one, a senior advisor of Trump's. Casey Hutchinson, special assistant for legislative affairs to Trump. And Keith Kluklinski, senior counsel to Jeffrey Clark, the assistant attorney general. All names, all people going to possibly have something to say if you can get them into the room. This is one of those moments where you go, got to get him into the room first. And for me, it comes back to Steve Bannon. If you can't get Bannon into the room, if you can't force him to sit in that seat and at least take the fifth, I don't know that any of this stuff turns into anything. Got to do it. Got to move on this stuff. This is how we have to hold people accountable. Now understand, the reason I started off with a Republican Party hell-bent on division and no is none of this stuff is going to matter to them. The narrative has already been set on the extreme right, and we've got to deal with that. These are people you're never going to reach because they believe January 6th was a patriotic day. They believe that they were doing the right thing because they've been sold on this idea that there was fraud. There were tons of fraud. I was listening to some clips of Steve Bannon speak not too far from where I sit. He was in Gettysburg not too long ago, and he was going on the narrative. They stole the election, and they told us they were going to steal the election. They told us that Donald Trump was going to win on election night, but over time it would be stolen from us, and they would count the votes. Yeah, because one party, the Republicans, showed up to vote in the face of a pandemic, while Democrats said, no, let's vote by mail. Let's get our ballots in. And those take time to count. Knowing the rules here in Pennsylvania, that you can't start counting those ballots, a couple million of them, till the day of. Knowing that it would take a couple of days. And as those votes get counted, the narrow of Trump's lead would shrink. And then once all the votes are counted, you would then find out who won. That's usually how it goes. Now that they take as stealing, and this is their belief structure. And how this happened? Well, they have a massive media structure that is bent on ensuring that message is constantly pounded into people's head. So if all you're hearing 24/7 is Joe Biden cheated, you're probably going to end up believing it. If all you do is get your news sources from crazy people, chances are you are going to find yourself somewhere along the lines of crazy people. This isn't difficult to figure out. This isn't rocket science. You don't need to be a genius. It's none of that, which is why the conservatives spend so much time, effort, and energy in promoting their kind of media. Lying. Also, their kind of education. Now, I love Youngkin's statement the night that he won as governor of Virginia. He said, we want to teach children how to think, not what to think. That is a brilliant piece of of bumper sticker sloganeering. And if only it were true. Now, in the instance that he was talking about that theory about race that's critical, that no one's teaching and no one understands, if it's in that vein, you go, it's a dog whistle thing. That's what he was talking about. He was telling all those uneducated white women, yep, so you stop those theory people from their critical thing. But when it comes to everything else, especially religion, no, we most certainly want to teach kids exactly what to think and how to think, which is why, again, they spend so much money on messaging, and why I found it interesting that evidently there's going to be a new university, a new conservative-led university with conservative thinkers and free speech people. And people are fiercely independent. People who are going to say the things and teach the courses that you just can't do anymore. Basically what they want. And this is, they want to go back to the 50s where they could walk up to a black person and say the N-word without repercussion. That's what they want. They want to be able to put women back in their place. They want to be able to be as homophobic and as misogynistic and as racist as they want to be without consequence. And this is why I believe they're starting the University of Austin. Now, it doesn't have a campus yet, doesn't have accreditation yet, doesn't have anything, but it's going to be awesome. They're going to teach the important stuff. Because according to their video, nice, very well done video, they're tired of waiting for America's universities to fix themselves. So and it's a whole bunch of, you're the ones that you would expect off onto the fringe, coming together to create whatever university they think they're going to create. They say in 2022 they're going to start accepting applicants. They're not doing it yet because, again, they're not accredited. So for me, it's kind of like Trump University. We're going to have a whole bunch of crazy people together. This is an organizing opportunity for them to teach you what to think and how to think it. Now, they claim by summer of 2022, they are going to offer, and I am not making this up, a suite of forbidden courses. And I'm not quite sure what that means yet. I'm not sure what a forbidden course is, but this, I'm assuming it's going to be around the 2022 campaign. It's around the 2024 campaigns. It's about getting, and this is what the right does masterfully, and I give them credit for it because their funders understand just how important messaging is, even if Democrats and liberals don't get it. The right understands giving people the messages that they want them to have, and focus group testing, think tanking, approving them, and then funding the heck out of it. This is part of that. Now, the reason they chose Austin, Texas, initially my thought was, well, Austin is a very liberal place because you've got the University of Texas there. It's a college town. This is where a conservative fight. If your view is we need to save higher education and we're going to compete with one of those liberal universities, it seems like a good idea. If in academia you want to have that debate, that vigorous kind of discussion, seems like a good place. And as I'm thinking this, I'm going, okay. Oh boy, did I give away too much credit. Evidently, the reason they chose Austin, Texas, I almost can't say this. It's one of those things where you go, it is so ridiculous and stupid that I can't believe I'm going to say it. Evidently, this private nonprofit, financially sponsored by this Cicero Research Group, they chose Austin because they have an affection for podcaster Joe Rogan and Elon Musk. Evidently, they claim if it's good enough for Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, it's good enough for us. And you go, wait a second. How is it that you took a podcaster and a rich guy, and that's where you're going to, this is why you chose your location? What happened to businesses being about location? What happened about educational opportunities in places where you need them? Oh, that's right. They don't believe in academic integrity. That's not what this is about. This is about propaganda, which again is why they chose the rich guy to help fund it and the popular podcaster to be the microphone to get it out. This isn't about education. It's about none of that. It's about pure propaganda. And this is what the right does masterfully. But here's what they also do masterfully. They're going to figure out, and this is the part that's infuriating, they are going to figure out how to get an accreditation from somewhere so that they can get their claws into our GI Bill money. So that all these soldiers coming back from Afghanistan and elsewhere who have money to get an education to help them lead a good life, they're going to get fleeced and bilked. Because that's what this is really about. It's about the money, but it's also about the propaganda. It's about bringing those folks in, not just making sure you fleece them, but giving them the message. The conservative message. Again, teaching them what to think, how to think it, and why to think it. This is dangerous stuff. But this is what the right has been doing for decades. This is not new. This is what they've been getting away with in the dark of night under the cloak of education for way too long. You know, all of these think tanks that sprung up over the last 50 years, all funded by billionaire money that eventually you and I pay for because they're nonprofits. These are people who know how to exploit the tax code. And while your kids don't get the education that they're entitled to, while we don't get a healthcare system that we're deserving of, while we don't have an infrastructure that is sound enough, we do have a BS machine second to none. And conservatives do it better than anyone, which is why you've got the working class of this country willing to literally beat each other up in the streets over a billionaire who could give a rat's behind about him and has told them that. Said he loves the poorly educated. The people who get killed in the military are losers and suckers. That he doesn't like people who get caught talking about John McCain. That's somebody they're willing to fight and bleed over. It's literally insane. But this is how powerful the propaganda machine is. This is how powerful the right-wing money machine is. This is how powerful this whole thing is. And sadly, I think this is going to work. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
More American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was the day workers in Windsor, Ontario, walked off the job in a general strike to support strikers at Ford Motor Company. 20,000 CIO workers brought the city's industrial production to a complete standstill. 11,000 members of UAW Local 200 had been on strike against Ford since September 12th. They demanded a union shop and dues checkoff. As the strike wore on, picket lines swelled every day with as many as 1,000 to 2,000 amassing at the gates to stop scabs. Then, on this day, more than 9,000 additional members of Amalgamated UAW Local 195, working at 27 area plants, joined them in support. Thousands of picketers set up a blockade at Ford's riverfront plant that tied up the city's transit system. Sandwich Street was choked with cars, buses, and trucks. More than 1,000 cars were bumper to bumper in an endless traffic jam as strikers worked to prevent a police attack on the picket lines. The 2-mile blockade and general strike were in effect for 2 days until the government threatened to send in federal troops to aid provincial and Canadian police. Thousands continued to picket. By November 12th, AFL and CIO leaders throughout Canada were calling for a work holiday to show support. Then, on December 19th, workers agreed to binding arbitration. Supreme Court Justice Ivan Rand was assigned the case. He ruled against the closed shop, but for dues checkoff.
he put forth a series of rules and penalties regarding labor disputes that would come to be known as the Rand Formula. It has served as the basis for labor relations and collective bargaining in Canada ever since.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some pretty good news. Again, I'm happy that the infrastructure bill is passed. Now, how do we take that money, get it out the door, and start rebuilding America? And as I've been saying, look, from this moment forward, I'm hoping every politician, every voter finds a picket line, adopts a striker, and gets a master's class in working class economics and talk about how do we rebuild our small communities, our rural areas, how do we rebuild manufacturing, and, well, rebuild our country. And here to share some thoughts on how we get to that point and where we need to go from here, I've asked David Pepper to come talk with us. David's a former Ohio Democratic Party chair. He's also the author of Laboratories of Autocracy, a wake-up call from behind the lines. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So this is, I've been saying this is, in Biden's words, a BFD. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
While I don't think it's enough, I think it's still a big deal.
Yeah, no, it is a big deal. I mean, if you think about it in terms of these communities, it's, this is the opposite of trickle-down economics. We finally get to show what it means to invest and that it can actually make a difference. And I think the reason this never got done under Trump was at the end of the day, Mitch McConnell and these others, they don't want people to see that robust investment can actually lift places that haven't seen a break in a long time. So it's an opportunity in that way. It's an opportunity to make a difference in all these communities. And I think it's an opportunity for good candidates and office holders, but also candidates who'll be running in tougher districts to actually now have something to run on as opposed to just running against.
Yeah.
And I think if the administration does its job well, and the DNC, where they're really, they're putting the administrative officials at work all over the country. And whether you're a state house candidate or a congressional candidate, even in a tough district, you now have something to say, hey, we're about this. We're not only about what they say we're about, we're going to help build this Main Street back, build a flood wall in this community. And we just haven't had that for a long time.
Too long. And look,
and in some ways it's more tangible than even the Affordable Care Act was. I mean, one thing I always say is Obama won Ohio in 12 because of the auto rescue. All around the state, towns that built auto parts and autos knew that he had done something to help them. This is like that if we do it right.
If we do it right, and that's the thing. Now, Trump evidently went ballistic today on Mitch McConnell, ripped into him for allowing this to happen and supporting this and actually voting for it. And am I the only one who remembers that there was a $2 trillion plan back in 19 that Trump himself, basically tanked just despite the Democrats? He could have had this win. Yeah. I guarantee there would have been more than 13 Democrats who voted for this.
Totally. I mean, I was seeing the same thing. I don't remember all the timing. It's amazing that he had 4 years, and the first two he had everything he needed in terms of the House and the Senate. If it had been done at all close to right, Democrats would have voted for it. We're not playing the games they are now, that's why I was saying, at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, how are they unable to do it? I think one, big investments like this scare them because it's a democratic model of governing that they want to not happen because it actually works. And B, and someone else, I think one of the columnists pointed this out, but it's also true. They were unable to do almost anything without a corrupt or privatization element. So rather than just a robust investment, there was always some deal for somebody. There was always some investor that was going to pocket something. And I think they couldn't help themselves, even on something as basic as this, without really corrupting it up in a way that made it much more complicated. So it is incredible that for 4 years, and someone asked me this the other day, I think it's true. If Trump does run again, and I have mixed feelings, I actually think there could be better, more formidable opponents than Trump, by the way, in 24.
I agree.
But talk about a clear contrast between Biden and Trump. Trump had 4 years, never got any of it done for anybody, anywhere. Joe Biden in his first year, despite a very narrow margin, got it done across party lines. I mean, you want to talk about, a clear contrast and who is successful. I think that's why Donald Trump's lashing out today. It's a really bad contrast for him.
No, it absolutely is, and I think you're right. I think in another year or two, especially after the stuff that keeps coming out, I think Trump will be a little battered. But I still don't want him to run in 2024.
Yeah, no, I don't either. You don't want to wish for that, but I think that if he were, like, this is a bad moment for him. He knows it. He can't even help himself. But now he's trying to blame McConnell for his own failures.
This is a moment where, again, the idea of shovel-ready projects. How many shovel-ready projects do we have to get out the door, to start getting things done, so people actually see the work being done? It's one thing to have the signing ceremony and say, hey, there's money coming. It's a whole nother thing for people to actually see the actual work being done, the jobs being created, the lives being better, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is the point I've been trying to make for some time. You gotta really be intentional and explicit that this is going to a lot of these places that don't think it's going to them. In Ohio, what's the famous bridge is falling apart down the street from me, Brent Spence Bridge, massive project. Small towns are thinking, well, this is for that bridge. And, I hope it is. This bridge needs something. But they don't think it's for their town. They think it's for somewhere else. And unless you really, I think, bend over backwards to say, there are projects near you that you will see, and then do it. So they see it. They'll just assume it's for somewhere else, and they won't, frankly, vote based upon it. So I think this is where, Tom Vilsack, Pete Buttigieg, Granholm, Marcia Fudge, who's from Ohio, I think all of them need to really be thinking through the breadth of this, where it goes, and again, be very explicit, intentional. And the other thing I would do is, sometimes I think at the highest levels of politics, people just think like a speech is addressing something. Oh, we gave a speech on that. Go walk these towns. Don't call everyone together for a speech. Or maybe it's get out of the car if you can, security wise. Walk the street. Feel the dilapidation in these places. You can't help but get pissed off, pardon my French. It's terrible. They're dying. Go feel it, go see it, and have in a year or two, the hope is shown that something came through the town and fixed it. And sometimes, again, I think whether you give a speech and you think you covered it, go to the places, walk the town, see the decay, and then come back later when the work's being done, talk to the workers, and come back after that when the Main Street looks a lot better. I think it's got to be a much more sort of bottoms-up approach to this messaging than just showing up and give speeches to big groups.
No, I mean, it's old school retail politics. I mean, it's being part of the community. It's how it's supposed to work, which is why I've been saying in this moment, if you're a Democratic politician, you're a Democratic voter, I don't care where on the spectrum, you need to find a picket line. You need to get out and talk to those striking workers and find out why they're there. Find out the issues that are affecting their lives. Take the master's class on working class economics and then do something to make their lives better and other working people's lives better. The video that you shot in Manchester, Ohio was an incredibly important moment, because there's a Manchester, Ohio in every single state, probably in every county in this country, that we could be making lives better if you use this bill properly.
Yeah, and it's funny. So I tweeted that out, and then after the infrastructure vote, I said, tweet out, I tweeted that out and said, tweet out the name of a town and a congressman who just voted against infrastructure. And I showed my video. People were like, oh, we got towns like that all over Iowa, Indiana, Texas, New York. These towns are everywhere. They have been left out. Democrats don't lean enough to say, we're trying to help you too. Of course, we got to help our big cities. They need help too, but we don't intentionally tell these folks, you're dealt in as well. And Republicans are so gerrymandered in these areas, they look past them too. They're voting against the interests of these towns, just like they did last week on the infrastructure bill. Yeah. And I think there needs to be a lot more of that. But it's I have a Ford F-150. It's driving your Ford F-150 to these places, getting out, walking down the street. And if you're not pissed off by the shape of these places, then you just shouldn't be doing this. And I think this is one reason I think Joe Biden would be so strong.
No,
He's got empathy just oozing through him.
Absolutely.
If he got out and walked Manchester,
yeah, but here's the thing.
he'd be livid by the shape these places have been left in by trickle-down economics. They need this infrastructure boost as much as any place in America.
I'm right there with you. But, I look at, now we're starting to see reports coming out evaluating last Tuesday. We're starting to see the reports coming out. Oh, well, we need to do something about rural America. Every Democratic county chairperson in rural America is saying the same thing. I've been telling you for years. We know what the answer is.
Yeah.
And the answer is we've got to get into these places, fight the fights, and then take the investment and make things happen. There's a new report out by this Richard Martin guy for the American Family Voices group titled Factory Town, where he goes through all of the states that you listed, Iowa, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all of those Midwest industrial states that have just been decimated by bad trade deals and horrible policy. And he's saying the same thing. We've got to invest and fight in those areas. We're not Magellan discovering anything, David.
Yeah.
We just got to do it.
Yeah, and here's the thing, sometimes you hear, well, you can't do that because you got to do this. In a place like Ohio, you got to do it all. You're not going to win. And here's the truth. It's the same message. These towns that are going to clearly lean Republican, they need the same inputs and the same policies as your large cities that are Democrats. It's not like you're going to these towns and saying something different than you are to the parts of Cincinnati that need improvement. So we don't have to sort of choose one over the other. We just got to go to both places. The sooner we do that, the better. But I do agree that it's been pretty clear for a while. But if we don't, and this is what's happening. If we don't do this, then all we do is play defense on all the issues they bring up in these places, which have nothing to do with economics. And here's the other point. Am I saying we have to do this because we're going to win 50% of the vote in those? No. But we cannot lose. You do it because it's the right thing, first and foremost. But if you go out and make the economic argument to lift these places and you say trickle down isn't working, right? Well, let's bring some infrastructure in. At least you arguably can get back to the high 30s or 40s that Obama was in these places. Obama got to 40% in most of rural Ohio, probably felt bad losing 60-40. You get to 40%, you're winning these states.
Right.
So you're not going to win everyone over. Some are still not going to like other cultural issues or the wall. But if you're making and this is Sherrod Brown's politics, hopefully Tim Ryan's, if you're making an economic argument, you're getting people to think, oh yeah, I may not even agree with that guy on all those things, but man, he really lifted my town, so I'm going to give him a vote. And that's how you get yourself into the high 30s and 40s, which means you have a chance to win Ohio and you win Virginia and you win a lot of other places. If you're mired in the 20s, game over. I don't care how well you do in your big cities. There's not enough vote to make up for losses of the type we've been seeing in rural Ohio when we simply don't do anything there.
Now, you brought up the cultural stuff, and I've had a lot of people going, well, this moment right now, Democrats are talking about abandoning the culture issues, and I'm in the position, I'm not abandoning them. I'm finding places where we can find common ground. And I think the economy is a place where, you go back to, the Clinton years. And look, I was not a huge Clinton fan, but it was the economy, stupid. That's where we start. If we can start with wanting to build a better economy for every working person, where people have decent wages, decent benefits, a decent opportunity, and shot at a future, that is a great starting point to then begin conversations around everything else, which is why I'm on this adopt a striker kick. Get out there, find common ground, walk shoulder to shoulder with that striking worker, and figure out how you come to some kind of consensus.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll mention Sherrod. I've run statewide a couple times. I have met so many voters who've said the same thing about Sherrod. I don't agree with them, including Republicans. Oh, I don't agree with that guy on everything, but he's fighting for me. I can feel it. He gets my vote. Once they know your core, if your core is good jobs, collective bargaining, pensions, wages going up, you're helping their struggling town. If they know that's who you are at your core, the other stuff is secondary. Not for everybody, but for enough people to win. If they don't know that that's your core, then all that other stuff gets so thrown at them that you just lost the vote. So they've got to know that at your gut level, you're fighting for them. They got to feel it on those economic bread and butter issues. And that puts you in the game to frankly win that vote over. And that's been why some candidates are able to succeed here, even if on some issues, so those people don't agree with them.
Yeah.
But if you don't give them that core to stand on, you have nothing.
Exactly. But I look at this, the current Republican Party right now is lost their mind. I mean, the fact that, yesterday you had, a congressman, come up with a cartoon fantasizing about killing the president and another member of Congress while the party is talking about throwing out the 13 people off their committee assignments who had the audacity to vote for this infrastructure bill is just maddening.
It is. I mean, I think it's hard. We lose sight of it. And I'll just give an example. And again, this is going to be counter to what a lot of the story is. We had a lot. I mean, I have 2 kids. We were talking about before this show. My kids don't think twice about wearing a mask at school. They don't even think about it. And last week, all around the state, we had this whole right-wing orchestrated school board, attack that all these people were running to get rid of mask mandates, not just in blue areas, but in red areas, suburbs. The anti-mask candidates got crushed. Now, they won in a few places, but for the most part, I think voters were saying, we're tired of people yelling at these meetings. We're tired of school board members being threatened. We don't mind that our kids are wearing masks. At least 70% of us don't. Keep your extremist politics out of our local school boards. And they literally sent it out and found these people. And in a way that shocked me, because I thought they were all going to win, most of them actually lost. And I think that even that shows how extreme the party's gotten. Like this hardcore anti-mask stuff is actually where about 25 to 30% of this country is. And everyone else is like, can we just get through this pandemic and keep our kids safe, please?
and get to something better.
That silent majority, again, not just blue parts of Ohio, but red parts near Youngstown, near Northeast Ohio, red suburbs or swing they all voted against, not all, but most of these candidates with all the money they had and nasty mailers. They just lost because I think there's a silent majority who's like, this stuff's crazy. Maybe you're going to have it in Congress, maybe the State House. Keep it away from our schools.
I'm right there with you. David, I appreciate the time. Great stuff. Hope people will check out the book, Laboratories of Autocracy, a wake-up call from behind the lines, written by David Pepper. David, again, thanks so much. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Thanks, Rick. Take care.
Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1952.
That was the day that the labor movement lost Philip Murray. Philip was born in Scotland in 1886 to an Irish Catholic family. His father was a coal miner and a union leader. Philip followed his father into the mines at just the age of 10 years old. The father and son made the trip to the Pennsylvania coal fields together when Philip was just 16. They saved enough money and then sent for the rest of their family. One day, Philip got into an altercation with one of his bosses. Not only was he fired, his entire family was kicked out of their company home. From that point on, Philip was dedicated to the union cause as the only hope for working people. He quickly rose through the ranks of the United Mine Workers, becoming vice president by the time he was 33. He worked closely with United Mine Workers president John L. Lewis. During the 1930s, there became a nationwide drive to organize industrial workers. Philip was appointed to lead the Steelworkers Organizing Committee, a key sector for the industrial effort. The Steelworker campaign met with historic success. they reached a collective bargaining agreement with U.S. Steel, the giant of the industry. Philip went on to become the first president of the United Steelworkers of America, as well as president of the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Under his leadership, industrial labor became a powerful force. But that force was checked by the passage of the Anti-Union Taft-Hartley Act in 1947. The anti-communist hysteria of the Red Scare also took its toll on the CIO, forcing Philip to expel some of the most radical unions from the organization. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, former President Barack Obama pointing his finger at China and Russia, calling them out for what he said is a dangerous lack of urgency in doing anything to cut emissions and deal with climate change in their country. He said when it comes to climate, time is really running out. We are nowhere near where we need to be. And he's right, we're not. And I love the Bill Nye the Science Guy clip from the John Oliver show, where he just lit the planet on fire and was very blunt. I don't need to explain to you what's going on. The planet is burning. But did it in a way that you would have expected the good Bill Nye to actually do. But lots to get to, lots to talk about, especially around this infrastructure plan, what we can achieve, what we can go forward on, and especially taking on China. I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it is good to be with you.
So is the president right? China and Russia, they a dangerous lack of urgency when it comes to dealing with the climate change issue?
Yeah, I think that if there were such thing as an outliers club, they would be the founding members right now, unfortunately. Trump wanted to join them, obviously, but he's no longer able to join any club globally.
Thankfully.
So, yeah, thankfully. And I think that, you know, for Russia and China, slightly different circumstances. I mean, China's at a different level of development, but it is far from a developing nation now. I mean, it has some of the most advanced infrastructure, manufacturing, but it's gotten there a very, very dirty way. And it hasn't cleaned up. And I remember, Rick, even about 10 or 11 years ago, we commissioned a study inside China of pollution controls in the steel industry. And it was shocking to discover that even the very slim laws they had were never enforced. I mean, just they weren't. There were no fines, there were no consequences. And so whatever, you know, you always have to take whatever China says it's going to do with a grain of salt. But the fact that they're just saying that they're not cooperating on climate is a real problem. Now, the question then becomes, and this is a debate that I'll be honest, kind of divides progressives. There's some progressives who say we don't want to confront China on other issues because we need their collaboration on climate change.
Right.
Okay. Unfortunately, I think that doesn't recognize the reality is that China is so big right now, you can't ignore these other issues because they have economic consequences, they have security consequences. And one thing we know, Rick, that there's not a lot of pressure points that we have with China, but we do know from the past that if there is a group of nations that gets together and China's out there kind of doing its own thing, that China does want to come back and have a seat at the table and doesn't necessarily want to be shamed that way. So I think it will take a little more than just Obama saying this. I think it will take, in addition to the Biden administration, I think it will take the EU, other countries really actively trying to encourage China to do the right thing. And if China is unwilling to do the right thing, to then say, well, there's going to be serious consequences to that. Unfortunately, and this is just the last point I'll make, there's something that stands in the way of that, which is multinational companies who are addicted to the low cost of production in China, which is artificially low because of the government, because of the pollution, because of the carbon output, because of the labor exploitation. And so they need to be acting more responsibly every single day to really solve this climate challenge that we have.
Yeah, cheap labor and lax environmental regulations, that's heroin for a CEO. And our CEOs are addicted to it. And that's part of where policy has to change that. We need to have an intervention with corporate America. And part of it is dealing with our trade issues with China.
Yeah, it sure is. I was struck by something that Tim Cook said today. The New York Times had a conference, Andrew Ross Sorkin, the Deal Book conference. He gets a whole bunch of CEOs. And Tim Cook was asked about why they're in China continuing to do business. And he said, well, I think it's a bad thing for businesses to be sitting on the sidelines. So, and here he uses some selective reasoning here, because he sits on the sidelines when it comes to calling China out for a genocide of the Uyghur people, or the environmental degradation that we see, or the labor exploitation, all of which Apple benefits from. And so, it gets me that Apple and these other companies that want to look so responsible when it comes to climate are enabling this, and then are making excuses for why they aren't taking a harder line on some of the things that are happening.
That's curious. It's a curious statement. I mean, on the sidelines. You mean like on the sidelines where in China they are like the surveillance state for the Chinese Communist government? Yes. I mean, did I miss something here? Maybe I did. Maybe I missed something.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that they are, Apple and these other companies are addicted to this production platform that's been developed in China. But here's the thing, Rick, could they do it a different way? Absolutely. I mean, Apple seems to be able to do whatever it wants. I mean, it has a ton of cash, has a bunch of smart people. If they really wanted to, and they set their minds to it, they could we could actually build smartphones in the United States of America. Yeah. The factory would look a lot different, but they could do it if they wanted to, or, they could press China a little harder. Everybody's afraid of losing access, not only to that consumer market, but I think just as importantly, to all that production capability that's been developed there that is like that cheap drug.
And the Chinese cash. The fact that the Chinese government gives them, a bunch of cash.
Yeah. There's massive subsidies, and then all you have to do is stay in the good graces of the government. And so Apple goes out of its way to do that, and to block any sort of try to block any sort of progress here when it comes to challenging China. That's why getting things even like a ban on Uyghur forced labor is such a tough thing to get through Congress, even though it is common sense, because you have some of the multinational companies that are out there saying, well, this is not the right way to do it. We need to have a seat at the table, right? We can't be on the sidelines, Rick. So even though they're happy to sit on the sidelines and shield their eyes when there are abuses happening right in front of their faces.
Yeah, they were ordering popcorn or something at that time. Never mind, let it go. But here's the thing: you bring up the other side of this. That I have a lot of friends on the left who are like, we would love to do that domestic production stuff that you believe is important, but we can get such cheap panels from China. We could do so much more with the resources we have. There's still this argument that we need their production capacity to be able to fight climate change. And I'm like, well, what's the point in creating a cleaner economy if it doesn't benefit any workers in this country?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And just let's be very clear about this. The people who speak the loudest about this are the solar developers, because they like bringing, like Walmart, the cheap stuff in from China, deploying it here and making a ton of cash. They're not providing a public good here. All right. They're making a profit. And so if they have to reestablish a supply chain that doesn't depend on forced labor, it's going to cost them money. It's going to bite into their margin a little bit. But guess what? They need to do that, because it is not, you cannot say it's a dilemma whether you are concerned about human rights or you want to make progress on climate. You got to do both, and you can do both. And so I'm glad that the Biden administration seems to understand this and seems to be wanting to keep tariffs in place on solar products and others coming from China, some of which are made, with parts or components that are produced by forced labor in the Uyghur region, number one. And number two, when it comes to federal support for clean energy, the Biden administration wants made in America preferences. That is, if you're going to develop this, you're going to get a bigger tax credit if it's made in America. Or if it's going to be deployed directly by the federal government, it has to be made in America.
It should.
That's the way that you bring some of this over, these types of incentives.
No, absolutely. And we create the next generation of good family sustaining wage jobs and clean up our economy at the same point. But here again, we're in this moment where, as you've said, there's going to be a lot of people looking to game the system, a lot of people to try and figure out how to cheat. And I've been saying, I think we need, kind of like, where's today's Harry Truman? Where's the Truman Commission to make sure that we hold corporations accountable and that we actually, find the cheats and in public, walk them down the aisle. Because at some point, the money that we're spending has got to be used for the aims that we're spending it for. And we need to hold people accountable, even if it means we start perp walking people.
Yeah. Well, I want to build on something that you said, Rick, about, having the jobs and the climate goals being met, because there's good evidence that you're going to build more support for the climate goals if the jobs are going to come with it. And the latest example is this Ford announcement that they're going to build these massive new battery electric vehicle facilities in the United States. They're going to be in Tennessee and Kentucky. So there will be battles about how good these jobs are going to be, and we'll wage those. But the fact of the matter is that the politicians in Tennessee and in Kentucky, none of whom have been very climate friendly, are all like, well, this is great. We're going to get some great jobs here, and we're going to, and it's going to cause them to start supporting some policies that support that work, because they'll have thousands of jobs in their states that are going to be supported by this clean energy future. And I think that's like, exhibit A in terms of why you need this made in America focus when it comes to clean energy.
Especially when you're talking about the next generation of electric vehicles and all of that has to be built here. There can't be a way where that gets outsourced and we use our tax dollars now to fund the Chinese dominance for the next century. That just can't happen.
No, it can't happen. It would be terrible for the economic situation for the middle class in this country. The auto sector right now has an outsized influence in manufacturing and in states, starting in Michigan, running the whole way down to the center of the country to Alabama. Okay. And if those jobs go away, they're not going to be great jobs that are going to come in their place. They're going to be worse jobs. And so making sure that we're doubling down on the energy efficient vehicles, the clean energy vehicles right now is going to be very important, so that we bring in those supply chains, so that we get that critical mass, and we develop that market. Otherwise, you're right. We won't get the jobs. And then it's gonna make achieving our climate goals harder, because it will erode public support for doing exactly the types of things we need to be doing.
So the question then becomes: it's passed soon; it'll be signed into law. $1.2 trillion investment in the future of our country. Again, I've been saying not to be a Debbie Downer, but the reality is it's about 4 times less than we need, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers. But it's a huge first step. How fast can we get this stuff deployed? How quickly does this get out the door? How quickly do we start seeing the change that I think we both want, and I think the country desperately needs?
Yeah, Rick, it's a great question. And so it's not like a stimulus check that you're going to get tomorrow. Okay, that is true. But this is more like when you're taking a medicine This is more like the time release capsule. Okay, you'll get some of it when you take some down the road. And I know right now that the Commerce Department, other agencies are ready to greenlight some things that are critically important, like energy grid security or ports, getting some ports furbished to deal with some of the supply chain issues. And I know that states are also lining up projects to be funded by this. So you will see you'll see a lot of demand built. And it ranges all the way from those roads and bridges to electric buses, to electric charging stations, to broadband for rural communities. And actually the broadband benefit is going to be felt the deepest in rural red states where there isn't that infrastructure right now. They're going to get a preponderance of the benefits from that type of money. So almost no matter your need, you're going to get something. And you're right, it is not enough. But at the same time, it is the single largest federal investment ever made in our infrastructure. So that in and of itself is, I think, noteworthy. And the fact that we had good presidential leadership, we had virtual unanimity among Democrats, and some Republicans came on board as well. Shows that when we have leadership, when we set our minds to something, we can get something done. It's not the perfect bill, but it is a great bill. And if you told me that's what we'd end up with a year ago, I'd be super happy with where we are today.
No, I'm happy with this infrastructure bill. I want to get the other side of it done as well, because I think we desperately need to address climate change and some of our human infrastructure stuff. But as far as this goes, this is a good first step in my view. This is going to get us down the road to rebuilding and to talking about future investments. Because in my view, this isn't the end all be all. This is the beginning.
Yeah. This is one piece of what we need to do to be more competitive, more just, more equitable as a country, and to have broadly shared prosperity. And you're right, those investments in people, in job training, in childcare are going to be important. The clean energy investments are going to be important, and it will build a better American future for all of us. You're right, it has to come together. And so, I'm embarrassed for the Chamber of Commerce and the other business groups that have always said, well, we're not for it now because there might be some tax increases in it. We got what we wanted. That's not the way to do business. Yeah. You need to understand that the Chamber, everybody else, businesses will benefit from all of these pieces of legislation that will make investments in people, in our physical infrastructure, in our clean energy future as we move ahead.
And it's 20 million new jobs potentially over the next decade. This is a good thing. It's going to help us move in the right direction. And I'm so glad you came on and helped share some of the information. As always, Scott, I appreciate you taking a little time, sharing your expertise. Good stuff.
All right, Rick, thanks for having me on. Keep up the great work, man.
Thanks so much. Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Make sure you check out their website, americanmanufacturing.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1935. The Committee for Industrial Organizations was created by 8 unions as part of the American Federation of Labor. United Mine Workers President John L. Lewis was the driving force behind this new committee. His aim was to organize mass production industrial workers as opposed to focusing on those in the skilled trades. While the American Federation of Labor had included some industrial unions, the craft unionists were the dominant force in the organization. The Great Depression had hit industrial workers and their unions hard. Leaders from the heavily affected unions pressed for more support from the AFL. In response, the AFL did authorize organizing drives in the automobile, rubber, and steel industries, but they gave little financial support or effective leadership to those unions. Matters came to a head at the AFL's 1935 convention when mine workers president John L. Lewis punched the president of the Carpenters Union. Afterwards, Lewis called together various industrial union leaders, including Sidney Hillman, head of the Amalgamated Clothing Workers, and Harvey Fremming of the Oil Workers Union, to discuss the creation of the CIO. In its statement of purpose, the CIO declared its aim to encourage the AFL to organize by industry. However, the AFL's leadership was not sympathetic to what they saw as an internal rivalry. In 1936, the AFL suspended all of the CIO unions. This led to the industrial unions' breakaway from the AFL to form a rival federation. The CIO changed its name to the Congress of Industrial Organizations. By 1938, the CIO had amassed 3 million members. The CIO ran successful organizing drives in auto, mining, meatpacking, and steel. The two union organizations finally remerged in 1955, forming what is known today as the AFL-CIO.
At least since the invention of the wheel, people have fixed, tinkered with, and improved every device they've possessed. It's been a human right. But after several thousand years, suddenly legal clauses are being tucked in purchase agreements saying that today's owners of products must not even peek, much less poke inside, the inner workings of our devices. Makers of anything with a computer chip in it, everything from your car to your toothbrush, have been especially vehement about this, rewriting human nature by outlawing our right to repair. Yes, they assert, you own the thing, but we own the intangible ideas that make it work. So if the product malfunctions, you must return it to us and pay us a premium to repair it. Plus, they prattle, you could hurt yourself trying to do it yourself, so trust us. Bovine excrement, barks Steve Wozniak. Companies inhibit your rights so they can have power, control over everything. Is he some consumer radical? No, Wozniak is the co-founder of Apple, the multi-billion-dollar global Goliath that is the world's biggest producer of consumer electronics. He's appalled that Apple has now become a fierce opponent of self-repair. He says we wouldn't have had an Apple except that early innovators like him grew up in a very open technology world. From the start, he points out, openness helps spread innovation and consumer demand. So, why stop the self-repair community, he asks? Two big reasons. Besides letting corporations lock in monopoly profits from the repair industry, it also dissuades customers from bothering with repairs. Just throw the thing away and buy a new one. This is Jim Hightower saying, if you wonder where such massive, deadly levels of pollution by lead, mercury, plastic, etc. come from, look to the gross throwaway ethic of big tech profiteers like Apple. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is made possible by you lowdowners who subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Hightower Lowdown. You know who you are. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we've been talking about, it's, Striketober moved into Strikesgiving, and it's, the era of worker militancy is ramping up. Look, at the end of the day, you come out of a pandemic where you call people heroes and tell them that they're essential and what they're doing is patriotic. It's not surprising when they want to be treated like that. And I look at what's going on the West Coast with Kaiser Permanente. The contract offer that I understand was given a 1% raise each of the next 3 years. When inflation is up around 4.5%, 5%, literally a slap in the face. And then you add on top of it that any of the new hires are going to get cut by 25%. You go, how is it that you could possibly even consider accepting that? Which is why they haven't. And potentially here in a week, we could see upwards of 35,000 workers at Kaiser Permanente out on the picket line. And here to share some thoughts on where things are, where things potentially could go, and why we're even here. I've asked Michael Barnett to come talk with us. Michael is the president of Steelworkers Local 7600, and Norberto Gomez, he's the vice president of Steelworkers Local 7600 out in California. Guys, I appreciate you taking time for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick.
So walk me through this, if you will. We're in this moment potentially where you could have 35,000 people out on the picket line because of an offer that nobody in their right mind could have taken. Michael, let's start with you. Why are we here?
So, we started bargaining with Kaiser back in late April. And what we got from them, the sort of the sign language or the body language, right, was that they were going to be coming for a two-tier wage system, at Kaiser with the Alliance of Healthcare Unions, which represent 52,000 members, including our 7,500 members. And so, bargaining through the summer was slow. There was a lot of stalling by the employer. And eventually in September, they came with their first proposal, with the two-tier system, the 1% raises for the 3 years with the 1% lump sum bonus. And, we've been bargaining with Kaiser, nationally, since 2000. We've been in a partnership with them since a labor management partnership that's been very successful for both the employer and for the unions that are involved. And, it just, seems like they are, dead set on concessionary bargaining, which is crazy in this environment, right? Especially with healthcare workers, which you said earlier, they were called heroes, right? And now they're essentially, being called zeros, right? Yeah. And so we're just kind of dumbfounded by, this, incompetent bargaining strategy by this employer.
Yeah, this sounds like it sounds like something that was so 2019. Prior to the pandemic, you might have been able to get away with this, but now, as I understand it, and Norberto, maybe you can answer this. As I understand, they're making a ton of money, especially for a nonprofit. So it sounds like cash is piling up. They just don't want to share it with the people who are actually providing the services and the care that your members are doing.
Yeah. So during the COVID time, 2019, 2020, Kaiser made $2.2 billion in operating profit during the pandemic, and so they made a lot of money. They were making so much money during the CARES Act when the government came out and was passing out checks to all these healthcare organizations. They actually offered Kaiser $500 million, and Kaiser said no, thank you, because they were making so much money. And so, what Michael didn't touch on is while our employees, who are non-RN employees, they're the auxiliary staff, right? So dietary, housekeeping, receptionists, laboratory folks, engineers, like everybody but the RNs, essentially. Before bargaining started, Kaiser was doing, while we were working and we were taking bodies out to the morgue or to the trucks, freight trucks in the back, because everybody was just passing away over this deadly disease. They were doing a study with Ernst & Young, had them do a study, and they were costing us against nursing homes and smaller hospitals, and that's how they came out with, we make way too much money, because they were costing us out against nursing homes, which normally anyway is they're paid less, right, than healthcare giants. And so that's kind of where we're at today and how we got there.
Jeez. And it sounds to me like there was, what they offered, there was no way your members could possibly even consider on any level, especially when you give the fact, and Norberto, let me ask you this, because there are already kind of divisions that are going on where you've got units that have been pitted against each other. Because as I understand, there are multiple unions in this coalition that you guys have got, and some unions have been favored, some have been not so much. So you've created this environment where especially the lower wage jobs were less compensated than, say, the higher wage ones, and some other problems along with that. Can you explain it a little bit?
Yeah. So we're in back prior to, I think, 2018, 2015 maybe, we were in a coalition of unions, which encompassed all the unions of Kaiser Permanente. But there was unions that decided to go a different way, and so we created the Alliance of Healthcare Unions, and that's where we're at today. And so, Steel, which is us, the USW, we're actually and in the scheme of things, we're actually paid about upwards of 39% less than employees outside of the Inland Empire, which is our, Riverside County, San Bernardino County areas.
And why is that?
And so, that's a good question. The manager, so Kaiser says it's because the cost of living is different, and they've always said that. The unfortunate part is Kaiser may be saying that, but the managers who we work side by side with, who we may be neighbors with, are on a regional pay scale. So they get paid the same as the managers in LA. So to say the cost of living is the same, or that's the reason, is an issue in itself, right? I do want to say that upwards of 70% of our membership is out of color. And so you can tell me what that looks like to you.
So could that be the reason that you're in this, the situation is the way it is?
So, to be fair and to be honest, a long time ago, maybe that was probably the case because, we were a very rural area. Like, the milkman would ride the horse to bring your milk to your house and the eggs and all that good stuff, right? Years and years and years ago. But today, that's not what it is, right? Inflation is on the rise. Things all cost the same. Gas costs the same almost. Housing is all the same. And it has been like that for many years. So that doesn't fly anymore, right?
Right.
And so when you look at the optics of things, Kaiser needs to do the right thing.
I'm with you.
We sit and we talk about we have to do learnings every year. We have to do learnings through Kaiser, and they're learnings about being inclusive and doing the right thing and all this other stuff. And so we're just asking Kaiser to do what they say they're going to do, and don't talk about it, be about it.
There's a good way of looking at it. Michael, let me ask you, because we're in this moment where the time is ticking away. Are negotiations going in a way that could avert a strike? How do you see things playing out in the coming days and weeks?
Yeah, so we are currently at the bargaining table, right? Norberto and I actually stepped away to be here with you tonight, Rick. And
appreciate it.
And so if I had a crystal ball, I really wouldn't even know what. I think we're heading towards a strike, to be honest. I think there's been some movement at the bargaining since we've give the 10-day notice, but it's just I just can't understand why this employer, who has $90 billion employer, $48 billion in reserves, is really trying to go after workers in this manner, right? Like, and concessionary bargaining in this market, right? After COVID, it's mind-boggling.
It sounds to me like they want the fight. They want to push you out because it almost sounds like a union-busting tactic. But being so large, I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing that you're in this spot. But also, as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they got a bunch of PPP money that they eventually gave back. So they literally had the resources that the federal government was handing out and then gave it back because, well, I don't know why. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so the reason why is because of the optics, right? Imagine, getting that taxpayer money when you're sitting on all this money, when you made, as Norberto said, $2.2 billion in operating revenue. And that's not even to mention all the money that they're making on investments and all those other things, right? And so, it's really kind of, it's an embarrassment and a slap in the face, that they're coming after, 52,000 workers, right? In this bargaining, session. And so, and you talked about it earlier, right? That maybe in 2019, maybe some of this stuff would have got by, maybe members would have stood up and wanted this fight, right? But just, our 7,400 members, at our strike authorization votes, we had 99.9% of members authorize a strike. Authorization for the bargaining committee to give a strike. That is unheard of, right? Especially in a healthcare union, because it's predominantly it's really 90% female, and not that females don't like to strike, because we have some very enthusiastic and militant members, right? But you really got to think of those things, and it was so powerful that our members, gave that message, and we gave that, showed a strong solidarity, and we actually, it's just like across the country, right? Employees are fed up, they're burnout after COVID, and they're not going to take this shit no more. Excuse my language, but
So let me ask both of you, because any potential strike comes down to community support. As I've been paying attention to this and watching from afar, it seems that the message is getting out that you've got this giant healthcare conglomerate who's just making money hand over fist and is stockpiling huge amounts of cash while trying to squeeze their workforce out of a meager existence. What kind of responses are you getting from the community, and what kind of support are you getting?
So it's positive. It is positive. There's reports that we're getting back that members are coming in, checking for their appointments, knowing what's going on, and they're actually telling our employees, hey, we're behind you. What they're doing is not right. And so that's kind of good to hear, right? It's refreshing to hear. For the last 20 months, 22 months, whatever it's been, we have been healthcare heroes. And, Kaiser's put up signage, they put on commercials about how, we're the healthcare heroes. We are the employees who have done all this work. We weren't sitting behind desks, planning how to create a 2-tier wage system for our new employees coming in. We weren't doing any of that. And so we were staffing and supporting every patient that came into Kaiser Permanente to give them the best care. We were the nurses and the employees holding those patients' hands and those family members' hands while their family was dying. It was a terrible thing. So I think the community sees that, they saw that, and they are supporting us 100%.
No, as they should. But at the end of this, as I've talked to nurses who've been on strike across the country, and I point to Buffalo, where the head of the Mercy Hospital there, the CEO there, was asked about how much they're spending on the strike, and he said, "Oh, we're spending tens of millions of dollars because we don't have a choice. This is the hand that we were dealt." And my response was, no, this wasn't the hand that you were dealt. It's the hand you chose, and you're wasting tens of millions of dollars that you could have used by paying your workforce, your loyal, dedicated workforce who brought you through the pandemic. You could have shown them the dignity of respect of paying them what you're paying these scab nurses to come and clean up your mess. Isn't the message at some point to the people in charge of going, look, you're going to waste millions of dollars to prove I don't know what point, when you could actually reward the people who built this wonderful healthcare system? At some point, does nobody just shake somebody awake and go, this is how it should be, and you're screwing this all up?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like I couldn't even say that better, right? That's exactly the point of this, right? Wasting millions of dollars, even if we, avoid a strike at the 11th hour, right? And, all this preparation that goes into it, we could have, had a contract, a fair contract for the healthcare heroes months ago, right? Instead of getting to this point. And then on top of just, the wasting of millions of dollars, right? They're putting patient care at risk, right? Because scab nursing, right? Scab anything, right? Is not the answer, right? That is not the high quality patient care that our members and members of the Alliance of Healthcare Unions, which again is 52,000 members, nurses, pharmacists, many classifications of employees across, in Southern California, Hawaii, Georgia, Colorado, right? Like this is a widespread thing, right? And you're sacrificing patient care because, you want to, pick this fight about 2-tier wages, which has failed across the country, right? Like, it's like a recycled,
it's a bad idea. It's a zombie bad idea that keeps coming back to cause division and destruction everywhere it goes. And look, you've got numerous strikes across the country going on just because of that. So it seems to me like they want to set this up for failure into the future. And it just seems dumb at this point. So let me ask you the $1 million question that I ask everybody. do your members really want to go on strike? I mean, does anybody ever really want this? And this is something that can be dealt with by an employer who just goes, hey, we need to respect our employees.
So for me, do our employees want to go on strike? No, of course not. Our patients at Kaiser Permanente have been with us forever. Our employees have seen these patients over and over and over again and helped them, watch their kids grow up, and now their kids have the same insurance and all of that. That's how long we've been around. So the question is, do we want to go on strike? No. But as Michael said earlier, 99% of our employees are ready to strike because they know that's not the right thing.
Because I'm looking at what's been offered so far, and you guys are clearly much deeper into the negotiation process. But 1% over 3 years and a 25% cut to new employees, that's a non-starter. You got to go on. You don't have a choice in that. The employer's left you down. So the last line of questioning I've got for you: how do we help? How do we get folks to help out? How do we get the community support that you need? Because as people I've talked to love your members, love the work that they do. Love our heroes and our essential workers. How do we help? What do we do?
So, just to clarify, so the employer did make another proposal recently, and they went up to 2% with 2% lump sum bonuses for the first couple of years. And then, then they tied 2% to essentially either we voluntarily agreed to a two-tier system or they force it upon us. If we don't come up with equal savings that they feel that a two-tier system would have over like a 10-year period, right? And so, it's, the message from us is, 2 tiers are non-starter, right? We will not agree to a 2-tier, right? We will not, agree to divide our workforce, create, inequities in our, with our members or, in the system, right? We will not agree to that. And so, to answer your question on what you could do to help is really just, get the message out there, right? That, hey, our members are going to be on strike and, any resources, any help, is much appreciated, whether it's, the, like the Cal Fed, which is California Federation of Labor, our central labor councils, getting the message out to other unions, because we do have strike sanctions from Teamsters approved in our area, right, which will help, strengthen our case for, winning this fair contract that we believe we're going to get, even if we have to go on strike. We believe that, we're strong, we're united, and we will get a fair contract.
Well, good on you guys. Michael, Norberto, I appreciate you coming on, giving us some information. Anything we can do to help, let me know. We're here for you. And I hope this gets resolved. But one way or another, let us know and keep us up to date. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
Infrastructure Week. I'm so happy to say that.
Bipartisan infrastructure bill passes Congress with key climate investments. Hopeful-ish news from UN Climate Summit in Glasgow. Plus,
it's not just that we can't afford to go backward. We can't afford to stay where we are.
Obama pushes world governments to do more, faster.
Good. All of those stories and more straight ahead.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it looks like Louis Go-Go Gohmert going to throw his name into the hat, considering running for Texas Attorney General spot against Ken Paxton in the GOP primary. Now, it's not that Paxton's been bad enough. Gohmert wants it worse. And you go, explain this to me? Evidently, Gohmert hasn't made it official yet, He's trying to raise $1 million by November 19th because he said it's going to take at least that to win against the current Attorney General. So it's about the money. He says Texas and our nation are hanging in the balance. Yeah, because Paxton's just been a hippie liberal. Crazy, crazy times. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the insanity, the fun, the pageantry. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Good. I like the hippie liberal Paxton.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, seriously, how much further to the extremes?
Right.
I mean, I view Gomert as the extreme of the extreme, but I know there's someone out there worse, and I know he's coming.
Right. Gomart's going after a fraud case that Paxton's been battling in securities fraud case, I think, since 2015. It's been, lingering around, but it's not because of that. It's because he isn't to the right of Louis. That's where it stands, right?
No, it's nuts. And look, your former party is losing its mind. Did you see this video put out by Congressman Gosar, I guess yesterday, it's an anime version, a fantasy video of him killing AOC and Biden, and nothing. I guess nothing going to happen.
Right. Well, the Twitter has taken his. I don't think it totally took his account down. I think
it just blocked that one tweet.
The one tweet, the anime tweet, and I did watch it. It's one of those stupid things, and I've seen other ones. They had some on Trump where he appears in the body of Conan the Barbarian or whatever, and he's slaying all these people, and they've done those. This one, of course, they put the faces of AOC. It's never a good thing to do. It's childish. It's a doctored video in the anime, and but then he attacks him with the sword, and that violates Gosar with the anime image of President Biden, and that violates the company's policies. So.
But even beyond the company policy, Bob, I mean, we're talking about a sitting U.S. congressman. We're talking about one of the 435 people privileged enough to sit in the halls of power and to make laws and to do the things that we expect our representatives. I gotta be honest. I'm expecting more from those folks, and what we're getting is the Gosards and the Gomerts and the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Boberts and all of this insanity. What has happened to the Republican Party and the institution in our Congress?
Well, they don't go after them officially in the House for stupidity. It just ranks on its own. Yeah, they don't have an official stupidity committee. It's a dumb thing to do. I mean, it just doesn't. What is it? It's childish.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not even childish. I mean, I expect kids to do this, but for me, it's that they're feeding a bigger message. You don't just put the time and the effort into this for no reason whatsoever. Right. There's a bigger message here to the base to rile them up and keep people. And this is the dangerous part. The dangerous part is they're keeping these people riled up for a reason so that when they flip the switch, we get another January 6th.
Right. And then it also had overlays, and I saw this in particular that kind of got me. It had overlays of the U.S.-Mexico border, and it had words like crime, gangs, and murder. And to my, at least, interpretation, the screen had a square area full of blood on the screen. That's what at least I think they intended for it to be.
Absolutely.
That's in the same anime video, and it's just like, when I saw it, I thought, why would you do something like this?
Because clearly you've got nothing better to do. Clearly there's no one in his district who's going to bed hungry. Clearly every child has health care and has the best education possible. Clearly their roads and bridges are perfect because he voted against the infrastructure bill. Clearly everything in his congressional district is a utopian paradise because he's got time to sit and play with videos.
I mean, they could put together, and he's from Arizona, they could put together an anime video of making fun of what he thinks is are quotes from AOC or something she said that he thinks is dumb. I mean, they could do that, and that becomes passable. It's still childish, but it becomes passable. This had a violent tone to it, obviously, and then that doesn't become passable. It's just
so what do they do now? I mean, the Republicans are talking about chucking the 13 traitors to the party who had the audacity, Bob, to vote for an infrastructure bill to invest in our country. They're talking about taking their committee assignments away from them. But this guy, who his own sister calls a sociopath, well, yeah, nothing.
Well, I mean, you make a great point, because if they're going, well, first of all, going after the 13 for their, quote, conduct of casting a vote for a piece of legislation that Trump thinks they made Biden look good, they actually helped the country is what they did, when all of us, including myself, for two transportation bills that started from 1995 through 2006, we all voted, most of us, not all of us, but most of us voted for those pieces of legislation. And had Trump done what he should have done when he became president, which was to do a transportation bill, he would have had votes, including Democrat votes, on that bill, and he knows it. So now, just because it made Joe Biden, quote, look good, all of a sudden, you're right. Some Republicans, if they've got the nerve to say that the behavior of the 13 is so outrageous they should be stripped from a committee for casting a vote in a democracy, then they should also note what they want done to the people that do offensive anime.
No, absolutely, but
the violent trend to it. Yeah, I agree with that.
But I think they're two different things, though. I mean, the one that they're just doing your job. You're bringing home the bacon. That is your job. And in fact, had Trump done what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail, and that is a $2 trillion infrastructure bill that he himself crashed in 2019 just to spite the Democrats, that was his doing. I would have voted for that. I think every Democrat would have voted for it because we need it. So for him to try and rewrite history is one thing. But, back to this, these 13 who simply want to go, hey, our constituents are demanding that we get something done. I'm not seeing it.
Well, I'm appalled by it. But my point is this: if I were in the media in D.C. standing in front of these people that want to throw the 13 off the committees, I would say to them, if you want to throw the 13 off because you think their conduct is reprehensible because they voted a certain way, why aren't you willing to throw the others off for offensive, violent anime? And I don't know how they would react to that. I'm wondering how would they react to that. But throwing the 13 off is it's complete idiocy. I mean, I can remember I can't remember his name, but I remember a Democrat voted for Hastert for Speaker. I don't recall he was ever questioned that he would be thrown off the committee by the Democrats for that. I mean, it's not a good thing to do politically, but he did it. I mean, these are votes. No member for a vote should ever be told they're going to be thrown off of a committee, ever. I don't care, either side of the aisle, ever.
No. And I said that when they were chucking Marjorie Taylor Greene. I go, I think it's a bad idea. I think you have to leave her right where she's at. Because for one thing, she's on the committee. She was on the education committee. You go, we need more funding for education. Exhibit A. Look at this one over here. To me, that's the perfect thing. Right. And now all she's doing is causing trouble with no job. I go, you got to give her a job, even if it's a bad one.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, this is well.
That's weird.
It is. Weird. We are in very, very interesting times.
Shameful.
Now, Adam Schiff is calling for his resignation, claiming that Gosar has no business being in the House in the first place. This is going nowhere, right? I mean, this is going to.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't like the resignation calls. I think one of the somebody will find this offensive what I'm about to say, I'm sure, but Al Franken asked for himself, to be investigated by the ethics committee at the time when the allegations came forth, and immediately he needs to resign, and that call grew, and he did. I just think there's methods that they have set up internally for looking at people who will violate the rules, the laws, or the spirit, or the ethics, or proper conduct of the House. And so I never did like these. They need to resign.
I'm with you on that. That's what elections are for.
Either side of the aisle. I don't like them.
That's what elections are for.
Right.
You throw the bum out. That's. I think it's much better that we get to throw the gratification of throwing them out than them leaving on their own terms.
Right. Exactly.
I guess that's just my my male mindset. Want to get that there. Before we move on and get to the infrastructure stuff and the subpoena stuff, Max Cleland died today.
Yes, I saw that.
I think you knew Max, right?
Yes, I knew Max. Right, he was a great. I was on the Veterans Committee with Bernie Sanders when I first got into the Congress, and of course Max Cleland, was just a big deal with veterans. Obviously, he was a Vietnam veteran. I think he got the Silver Star, if I remember, correctly, of course, and was wounded.
Right.
Great military service. Came from Georgia, and then he was in the U.S. Senate up to 2003. And he actually came in, I think, 2 years after I was elected. He came into the Senate, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's a sad day. But I thought you may have you knew him, and
yeah, I knew him. He was viewed as a moderate in the Senate too.
Unrecognizable today, clearly.
Yeah, I was just going to say that exactly. But yeah, Max Cleland was a definite veterans guy too. Remembered quite a lot for that.
There you go. Let's move on. The big news today: 10 more subpoenas on the docket. 6 yesterday, 10 today. What's going on?
I don't know what to make of this one because, and I read the list of people, of course, and I think one of the ones that might have more information would be Stephen Miller, who was a Trump senior advisor and is more controversial amongst the names that I saw. But they've got the former White House deputy chief of staff, and then they had the personal assistant to the president, Nicholas Luna. Then they had a special assistant. I think her name's Molly Michael. Anyway, they've got 10 subpoenas. And kind of the story around D.C., Rick, is, before they talk about who comes or doesn't out of the list of 10 and how effective is it going to be, the whole big question is what's going to happen to Bannon? That's the big question. What's going to happen to him? Is he going to be set as an example in case the others don't want to comply with the subpoena?
And he's the big fish. I mean, if you can't drag him in and set him in that seat and make him plead the fifth or tell the truth or do something, none of the other ones are going to come along.
Right. It's just like the insurrection at the Capitol. I was, so disappointed in right out of the barrel where they went with the first penalty. I would like to have seen 4 or 5 or 6 years, and then that says to everybody else, wow. And this is kind of the same case of what will happen to him. Will he get pressure, Bannon, and will that set the example for the rest of them? Or, will they say, okay, they're going to get some legal help? There's a lot of people in D.C. that will pro bono these cases. You know that.
Yep.
Just for the attention they're going to get in their law firms, and they will do that. So
goes nice on a resume.
Yeah, I think right, and I think so. Pursuing Bannon, I think, is important, as much as important that they continue to pursue as the 10 that they're now calling in.
Yeah, I'm again. It's all the subpoenas you want. It's a matter of can you get them into the seat? Will they ever see the inside of a hearing room? Because as you've pointed out a number of times, it take Eric Holder 5-6 years to not end up sitting in the seat.
Right. You can go down the list of them. It rarely happens. Harriet Miers, now, if you look at President Bush's attorney, she was saying no, and then a lot of pressure came up. They kind of moved on it, and eventually they, complied. So it's all pressure.
Yeah.
And that's why I think if they pursue Bannon, it may help on the rest. And as far as the 10 subpoenas, I mean, they need to move fast. 2022 is coming up. They need to move fast. That will mark a year. And if they're going to do something or try to drag information out of these people, they need to do it and get it going.
Yeah.
You don't want to be doing this in July.
No. But you brought up Harriet Myers, and I would argue that was a different Republican Party, and that was a different era. These are people who, they believe they're fighting a holy war. They believe, they're the martyrs of the next generation, and they're the uber patriots. I don't see that pressure is going to do what it would have done 20 years ago.
With Harriet Myers, it is a different world. Then I do agree with that.
No, I mean Bannon loves the martyr role. That's he thinks from the videos that I've seen come out, especially the one recently here from the Gettysburg area. He really he's ready to burn everything down.
Oh, well, this was one of the best things that could happen, Bannon fighting this, because he was not in the graces of Trump. He's back in the graces of Trump, and then on top of it, he was kind of fading into the background. Obviously, now his name's out front. He's going to get some free legal help on this. It's not going to bankrupt his personal checking account. Bannon's going to milk this for all he can.
Because at the end of the day, he's still in it for I still stay. It's all about the money. It's all about the grift. But we'll see how this plays out. Finally, wanted to get to the infrastructure bill that could be signed fairly soon. This is I think a good thing. I hope that it happens quickly. We've needed it for a while. What are your thoughts on how this is going to roll out?
Oh, I think it's a great piece of legislation. Trump should have done it his first month in office. It would have, given him a boost. I'm, dismayed it took this long, but here it is now. It's coming, and now the big heavy lifting part is coming because they need to get this money out as soon as they can, and in some cases they can't get the money out right away, which is the grant programs, and that's $100-some billion. But you know what? They can talk about it, and they can, keep the progress moving on it. But the key factor is get it out there, get these projects going so the engineering can be done. Some of these projects have been sitting with engineering. This money will make them shovel ready, and they just need to get out there and promote it. This is a good thing. I love the two bills that I had the opportunity to be on. There's not a downside to these bills. They can scream all they want about the 13 Republicans. I think they were very sympathetic to their districts, and their vote was the correct vote. All the people that voted for it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. But you hit a phrase there that I haven't heard in a long time. Shovel ready. How many shovel ready projects do we have? Because I go back to 2009 when we were told there were a lot of shovel ready projects that weren't quite shovel ready.
Well, that's why I brought that up, because one of the problems the Obama administration had, which administrations have, is to get these things out the door. So the White House is going to have to say to Buttigieg, okay, get her done. I'll use another presidential phrase, get her done. Yeah. They've got to really get it out there, make it move, and the public will, begin to see what's out there and what they got for their money, because they will get their money's worth. It's just sometimes it takes a while. Hopefully they'll move this along.
Yeah, what I've been finding interesting since you brought up Buttigieg is how the right has kind of jumped onto the press conference he did the other day, where now evidently according to the right every bridge is a racist bridge, and because he said, look, there's some structural things that were done that promoted racism and division, and this is going to be a way to undo some of that. And he was trying to say, look, we're going to open up the country and be more inclusive to everyone. But man, some of the folks sending me angry emails and stuff, they're going to tear down bridges because those are racist bridges. How well do you think this plays in the coming weeks and months to attack this legislation?
It won't. This will not play well. And Buttigieg was talking about a provision within the bill that is trying to account for diversity and opening up minority areas. It's that simple. There's a portion in the bill that takes a look at that, for communities. And that's what he's referring to. He's not talking about, renaming bridges or ripping them down or whatever because they were built a certain way at a certain time. I don't see a downside to this bill. I mean, if I was by the way, I would have voted for this bill if I was still in Congress. I don't care who got mad. And they are not going to lose their elections. Those 13 are not going to lose their elections over this piece of legislation.
Well, I think 2 or 3 of them aren't running. I know Gonzalez and Kinzinger aren't running.
Gonzalez is not running. He bowed out.
Yeah, and
went after him. But But I'm just saying that nobody will lose. If they're going to lose an election, it's going to be over something else. It's not. No Democrat or Republican will lose over this bill.
Right. It's going to be over something
stupid. This isn't a pork barrel. This is returning the money that the good people, they pay their gas tax, they pay their taxes at the pump, and they drive a car, and the car needs to be on a road and a bridge.
Yep.
And that's how you do it.
This makes a lot of sense. And look, in the process, we undo some of the horrible stuff of the past. I'm okay with that too. And
all right.
Specifically, if you've ever driven a truck in New York City, which I have done many times.
I'm lucky to say I haven't.
You know that the parkways are low bridges. They're all low bridges, so tractor trailers cannot go on the parkways because they won't fit under the bridges because Robert Moses, I guess, the guy who designed it, made all the bridges a certain height so that the buses couldn't get under them, so people from the city couldn't get out of the city into the other places. And yes, it was blacks, it was Puerto Ricans, it was Italians, it was Irish. They didn't want any of those people to mix in with everyone else. And yes, that is our history. So if in the process of rebuilding that infrastructure, you rebuild those bridges so that buses can get out there, great, and trucks can get under there, even better yet, so that you don't end up having trucks stuck under bridges. Just
Isn't
my
it something
spiel.
You mentioned Robert Moses. Most people would have no idea of what they used to deem as the great builder, but they have no idea how he planned some of these things.
Yeah. Oddly enough, the weird thing is when you read about him, he's the one that they credit with this horribly racist policy of doing these low bridges, but also in places like Harlem, I guess he built incredible community centers and things for the people in those areas. And you go, how does one square with the other? How is it that on one hand he's horribly racist for these bridges, and then on the other hand, did all this stuff for minority communities in the city? I don't know how you square that. And it's not for me or you to. It's just an interesting kind of juxtaposition.
Yes, it is. Because most people never, until this piece of legislation came up, a lot of people never knew the history.
Yeah, well, and a little education, not a bad thing, and it wasn't even critical race theory.
Right. Exactly. Right.
There you go, Bob. I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff.
Thank you.
Our good friend, former Ohio Congressman Bob Ney. No, seriously. I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at this stuff, I'm in favor of the legislation. I think we needed more. And as I said yesterday, the American Society of Civil Engineers says we need about 4 times this historic bill. That's how long we have done nothing. That's how long we've allowed things to go undone. And, as I said, had Trump came out with his $2 trillion plan, as he said he was going to do, I would have been full-throated behind it because it is a good investment for the country. That simple. And I'll bet you you'd have gotten more than 13 Democrats to vote for it. Quick break. Right back.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1897. That was the day that Dorothy Day, a leader of the Catholic worker movement, was born in Brooklyn, New York. As a young girl, her family moved to San Francisco. Her father lost his job as a sports writer due to the devastating earthquake of 1906, and the family relocated again to Chicago. In 1932, she met Peter Morin, and together they founded the Catholic Worker Movement, a faith-based social justice effort. The Catholic workers opened what they called houses of hospitality to serve those in need. Dorothy helped to co-found the Catholic Worker, a monthly newspaper that became a voice for poor and working people. While writing for the paper, Dorothy traveled and visited with some of the most exploited workers in the country. She talked with migrant agricultural workers in California and was arrested for supporting the United Farm Workers in 1973. In 1940, she visited the Hooverville encampment in Seattle, Washington. Dorothy's reporting vividly demonstrated how her faith informed her activism. She wrote, quote, "The rain poured down. Underneath was mud, ankle deep, and the long lane that cut between the rows of shacks reflected the gray clouds in its pools. But Christ is there. I thought sadly, there in the mud, in the shacks with his poor, with them he is trying to find a place to lay his head. With them he hungers, and with them he suffers fatigue of body and soul. Behold, O God, our Redeemer, and look upon the face of thy Christ, there in the dumps, among the creatures who still are men. Have pity on them and on us, who permit such things to be." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this is an interesting decision because you may remember that a federal court has pretty much stopped the vaccine mandate on the federal level. It's going to go through the process. So the government can't mandate it just yet, obviously going through the process. But interestingly enough, yesterday a federal judge ruled that United Airlines, they can impose a vaccine mandate on their employees. And this is one of those interesting things that I said from the beginning, that we, through our government, we collectively, that we can't figure out, that capitalism will. Because capitalism will figure it out one way or another. When it comes down to money, the moneyed interest will always figure it out. Governance a little bit different, a little bit more difficult, a little bit harder to put into places. But when the moneyed interests have to weigh in, this is this is where the capitalists step forward. Now, this U.S. District Judge Mark Pittman in Fort Worth, Texas, he rejected the argument that employees were making that they were putting them in, quote unquote, an impossible situation to choose either get the vaccine or unpaid leave. The religious freedom argument didn't seem to hold either. Because look, this is where it's been interesting for me. Should you have the religious right to get me sick? If this is the position that everyone in the workplace has to protect themselves, should you, because of your, whether you believe the sincerely held religious belief or not, whether it truly is sincere, I don't really care. But if you're making this argument, do you have the right as a matter of religion to put everyone else at risk? And the answer is clearly no. You have the right not to participate. You have the right to go and do something else. But in this place, you don't have that right. In a space where I have to be and you have to be, you don't have the right to supersede my right. And this is kind of the position that the country's in, because clearly we're not capable of deciding this. Our government isn't capable of deciding this because, we'll just elect crazy people to say, no, you can make everybody sick, which is what's happening, which is what the Republican Party has turned into. They're the party of, oh my God, you're flipping nuts. And I have people saying to me all the time, Rick, could you imagine that the Republicans were this crazy? Yes. Have you not been paying attention for the last 30 years? All of the fantasy stuff that they threw out there, all of the courting of the extreme right-wing white nationalists, all of the rhetoric that's been going on, Pat Buchanan. Seriously. But here you have this moment where now you've got a court that said, well, you have a choice. You get vaccinated or you're out of work. Now, what United Airlines has done is they've said, fine, if you don't want to get the vaccine, don't. Whatever that is, you have the right to stay home. We're not going to fire you. You're just not going to work. And they've given something like 2,000 exemptions already. But those employees are taking unpaid leave. if at some point down the road that mandate doesn't happen, doesn't continue, we come up with a game changer, a pill that goes, oh, you get COVID, you take the pill, you're cured, then it doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not as much. It's going to be interesting to see how this works itself out, because at some point, there's got to be a consensus on how we move forward. There just has to be. But there you go. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Are you on the I will never get vaccinated for any reason bandwagon because of whatever bizarre YouTube video you saw? I'd love to hear it because I'm collecting the stories. So by all means, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's show, you can download the podcast there at the website. Get the app on your smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. Make sure you follow us on social media at Rick Smith Show on Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube. Give us a like and a share and all of that stuff as well. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to... Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it looks like Louis Go-Go Gohmert going to throw his name into the hat, considering running for Texas Attorney General spot against Ken Paxton in the GOP primary. Now, it's not that Paxton's been bad enough. Gohmert wants it worse. And you go, explain this to me? Evidently, Gohmert hasn't made it official yet. He's trying to raise $1 million by November 19th because he said it's going to take at least that to win against the current Attorney General. So it's about the money. He says Texas and our nation are hanging in the balance. Yeah, because Paxton's just been a hippie liberal. Crazy, crazy times. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the insanity, the fun, the pageantry. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Good. I like the hippie liberal Paxton.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, how much further to the extremes?
Right.
I mean, I view Gohmert as the extreme of the extreme, but I know there's someone out there worse, and I know he's coming.
Right. Gohmert's going after a fraud case that Paxton's been battling in securities fraud case, I think, since 2015. It's been, lingering around, but it's not because of that. It's because he isn't to the right of Louis. That's where it stands, right?
No, it's nuts. And look, your former party is losing its mind. Did you see this video put out by Congressman Gosar, I guess yesterday? It's an anime version, a fantasy video of him killing AOC and Biden, and nothing. I guess nothing going to happen.
Right. Well, the Twitter has taken his. I don't think it totally took his account down. I think
it just blocked that one tweet.
The one tweet, the anime tweet, and I did watch it. It's one of those stupid things, and I've seen other ones. They had some on Trump where he appears in the body of Conan the Barbarian or whatever, and he's slaying all these people, and they've done those. This one, of course, they put the faces of AOC. It's never a good thing to do. It's childish. It's a doctored video in the anime, and but then he attacks him with the sword, and that violates Gosar with the anime image of President Biden, and that violates the company's policies. So,
but even beyond the company policy, Bob, I mean, we're talking about a sitting U.S. congressmen. We're talking about one of the 435 people privileged enough to sit in the halls of power and to make laws and to do the things that we expect our representatives. I gotta be honest. I'm expecting more from those folks, and what we're getting is the Gosards and the Gomerts and the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Boberts and all of this insanity. What has happened to the Republican Party and the institution in our Congress?
Well, they don't go after them officially in the House for stupidity. It just ranks on its own. Yeah, they don't have an official stupidity committee. It's a dumb thing to do. I mean, it's just doesn't. What is it? It's childish.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not even childish. I mean, I expect kids to do this, but for me, it's that they're feeding a bigger message. You don't just put the time and the effort into this for no reason whatsoever. Right. There's a bigger message here to the base to rile them up and keep people. And this is the dangerous part. The dangerous part is they're keeping these people riled up for a reason so that when they flip the switch, we get another January 6th.
Right. And then it also had overlays, and I saw this in particular that kind of got me. It had overlays of the U.S.-Mexico border, and it had words like crime, gangs, and murder. And to my, at least, interpretation, the screen had a square area full of blood on the screen. That's what at least I think they intended for it to be.
Absolutely.
That's in the same anime video, and it's just like, when I saw it, I thought, why would you do something like this?
Because clearly you've got nothing better to do. Clearly there's no one in his district who's going to bed hungry. Clearly every child has health care and has the best education possible. Clearly their roads and bridges are perfect because he voted against the infrastructure bill. Clearly everything in his congressional district is a utopian paradise because he's got time to sit and play with videos.
I mean, they could put together, and he's from Arizona, they could put together an anime video of making fun of what he thinks is are quotes from AOC or something she said that he thinks is dumb. I mean, they could do that, and that becomes passable. It's still childish, but it becomes passable. This had a violent tone to it, obviously, and then that doesn't become passable. It's just
so what do they do now? I mean, the Republicans are talking about chucking the 13 traitors to the party who had the audacity, Bob, to vote for an infrastructure bill to invest in our country. They're talking about taking their committee assignments away from them. But this guy, who his own sister calls a sociopath, well, yeah, nothing.
Well, I mean, you make a great point because if they're first of all, going after the 13 for their, quote, conduct of casting a vote for a piece of legislation that Trump thinks they made Biden look good. They actually helped the countries what they did, when all of us, including myself, for two transportation bills that started from 1995 through 2006, we all voted, most of us, not all of us, but most of us voted for those pieces of legislation. And had Trump done what he should have done when he became president, which was to do a transportation bill, he would have had votes, including Democrat votes, on that bill. And he knows